Between 1819 and 1969, the United States government ran a program. They took children. Some of them were 4 years old. They took them from their mother's arms, from their villages, from the only world they had ever known. They put them on trains. They cut their hair. They banned their languages. They changed their names. And they called it education. Over 150,000 Native American children passed through these schools. Thousands of them never came home. This is not ancient history. The last of these schools did not close until 1969. Some of the survivors are still alive, and the graves are still being found. The year is 1879. The Indian Wars are winding down. The United States government had spent decades trying to eliminate Native Americans through warfare. It hadn't worked, so they tried something new. A former military officer named Richard Henry Pratt opened a school in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and he gave it a mission statement that would define the next 100 years of U.S. policy toward Native peoples. He said, "Kill the Indian in him and save the man." Pratt believed that Native culture was a disease, that if you stripped a child of their language, their name, their religion, their family, what was left could be molded into something useful, something American. The U.S. government agreed. Within decades, they were funding over 400 schools across the country. Many of them deliberately placed far from home, so the children could not run back. This was not a fringe policy. This was federal law. Congress funded it. Presidents endorsed it. Churches ran it. Federal agents arrived at reservations, sometimes with police, sometimes with soldiers. They had quotas. They needed a certain number of children, and if families didn't cooperate, food rations could be withheld. Fathers could be arrested. The threat was always there, even when it was unspoken. When the children arrived, the transformation began immediately. Their clothes were taken. Their hair was cut off. They were given new names, English names, Christian names, names that erased where they came from. Speaking their language was forbidden. Children were beaten, locked in dark rooms, deprived of food. And the government called this progress. The official story was that these were schools, places of learning, of civilization. The reality was something far darker. Overcrowding was standard. Heating was inadequate. Nutrition was poor. Children shared beds, shared blankets, shared illness. Tuberculosis spread through these schools like wildfire. So did measles, typhoid, and trachoma, a blinding eye infection that became so common they called it the school disease. Children were put to work, not as education, as labor. Boys worked farms, chopped wood, dug ditches. Girls cooked, cleaned, and laundered. The schools sustained themselves on child labor. And then there was the abuse. Survivors described beatings for speaking their own language, sexual abuse by staff members, starvation as punishment, children locked in basements, children placed in solitary confinement. The federal government received reports. Investigations were conducted, and almost nothing was done. In 1928, a government report documented the malnutrition, the overcrowding, the child labor, the abuse, and called the schools a failure. The schools stayed open for another 40 years. Some children ran away. Many were caught and brought back. Some made it home, only to find they no longer belonged anywhere. Too changed for their home communities, never accepted in white America. Some children died at the schools, officially recorded as illness, tuberculosis, pneumonia, accidents, but the graves were real. Small cemeteries on the grounds of former boarding schools across the United States, marked with numbers instead of names, or not marked at all. In 2022, the U.S. Department of the Interior released its findings. Over 400 schools identified, over 50 burial sites confirmed, and they noted plainly the actual number is likely far higher. Many records had been lost. Many graves had never been documented. This is not history. This is last Tuesday. For most of the 20th century, this story did not exist in mainstream American consciousness. It wasn't taught in schools. It wasn't in textbooks. The survivors carried their trauma in silence. The government had a vested interest in that silence. Acknowledging the boarding school program meant acknowledging it was policy, that it was funded, that it was deliberate. Records were mismanaged. Some were destroyed. Tribal nations spent decades filing freedom of information requests, trying to find out what happened to their children. The Catholic Church ran these schools. The Episcopal Church ran these schools. The Presbyterian Church ran these schools. They received federal funding. They employed the staff. They administered the punishment. And they were never held accountable. The silence, in many ways, was the second injury. In June 2021, the bodies of 215 children were found at a former residential school in Canada. The world reacted with horror. In the United States, an investigation was ordered. Secretary Deb Haaland, the first Native American to ever serve as a cabinet secretary, oversaw the federal inquiry. The 2022 report identified over 400 schools and over 50 burial sites, and it noted plainly, the full scope of what happened may never be known. Congress has debated a Truth and Healing Commission for years. It has not been passed. The survivors are aging. Some have already died without a single acknowledgement from the government that took their childhood. And somewhere on the grounds of schools that have since been repurposed, turned into federal buildings, college campuses, parks, there are children in unmarked graves still waiting to be found. They were sent to school. They were never sent home. And for a very long time, America simply looked away.